thank you everybody for being here and attending this event. The fact that there are so many of you, we have about 130 people registered to this event, just kind of demonstrates that there is a need to open up this conversation about neurodivergence and how we can help supporting our colleagues and our team members, especially as we're, as I said before, just starting to unravel exactly what this thing means and the scale of it. The statistics are quite alarming. That I checked today, and 20% of people are estimated to be neurodivergent, which is a massive amount. And I personally believe that it could be a lot more than that. We're only really just starting to understand. Amy, you're nodding as well. You think so as well. So thank you for coming. This is our event, How to Support Your Neurodivergent Team Members in 2025. I just wanted to start off by echoing some of the things that Gemma said. So if everybody could mute their microphone. If you want to jump in with something, if you have a question or you'd like to share an experience, in the first sort of 45 minutes of this conversation, if you could just pop it in the chat, and I'll be monitoring it throughout, and I'll bring it to the guys and ask them whatever it is that you'd like to share. At the end, we are going to have a Q&A. So then we're going to invite you guys to ask your questions. It would be really great as well in the chat if you want to tell us why you're here, because I'm completely overwhelmed by how many people wanted to be part of this conversation. And so I'm really interested to hear why, why are you here? So feel free to pop that in the chat. So that's pretty much it. I just want to do a little intro to my guests. So I don't know if she's on my left or my right based on your screen, but we have the fabulous Amy Polly. Amy, can you do a quick intro as to who you are and what you do?
Yes, and this is really exciting because it's the first time that I am saying my new role out loud. So, hi everyone, I am Creative Wellbeing Lead at ADHD 360. Dream role, I've been an entrepreneur for almost 5 years now. So started off as a side hustle, 3 years full-time entrepreneur, and I'm just going back into the workplace because I just want to help people, and there are lots of people working at ADHD 360 that need support, and there are lots of patients that need support. So that's my new role. I am a mindfulness teacher. I am an international speaker, TEDx speaker, ADHD advocate, and I've done lots of work in the corporate wellbeing space, predominantly teaching mindfulness, creating a concept called Mindfulness, particularly for people who are neurodivergent, and also doing ADHD awareness sessions, a bit like what we're doing today. So, and I always wear pink.
Amy also has a basketball net next to her desk, which is like the worst thing in the world for someone who has ADHD. Show everyone. I mean, that's the most distracting thing I've ever seen. To my left or right, we've also got the GOAT, Thomas Woodhams. Tom, can you please give us a quick intro as to who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, okay. So, my name's Tom. I actually work for Sony Sports. I'm one of the senior talent partners for engineering. Bit about me quickly. I've got ADHD. I was diagnosed 6 years ago. I'm medicated. And I'm a podcast host, number 7 in the UK on Spotify. I'm also a guest speaker and also create a lot of content on LinkedIn. One being job seekers, also neurodivergent job seekers, and also ADHD content and how to kind of really understand yourself.
I would also like to add that Tom's the reason that I am currently diagnosed as ADHD, because when I was growing up, I didn't necessarily have a lot of the, I guess, signs of an ADHD child. I wasn't particularly hyperactive. I didn't really identify with a lot of things I was hearing about ADHD, but the more I listened to him and the more I heard about his experiences and some of the things that he notices with other people with ADHD, I started to discover that actually, do you know what? This is the thing that I've been experiencing my whole life. This is the reason that I struggled when I was in my 20s. It's the reason I struggled a lot when I was at school. It's the reason I struggled when I was in employment. And I guess ultimately that's why we're here, is to make sure that we provide workspaces that are conducive to people who are not neurotypical. So I guess the first part of this conversation is, what is neurodiversity? What is it? What conditions are we talking about here? And I guess we could start ticking that box off with you, Amy. If you could kind of talk us through a little bit about what it is and what we're talking about?
Sure. So just a caveat before we get stuck in, we're not necessarily going to have all of the answers. Everybody is different. Every workplace is different. We're not in your workplaces. We're trying to speak to lots of different people right now. We only have 45 minutes. So we're going to give you as much information and support as we can. And this is a trusted space. So, please feel free to ask questions. That's what we're here for. And, as I always say, trusted space, not a safe space, because we might have conversations that might trigger something for you. But we won't run away at the end. I certainly won't. If anybody wants to speak or has anything they want to talk to me about at the end, then we can do that as well. So I was diagnosed at the age of 37. I'm now 40. So it was sort of September 2021. And it was really eye-opening because I've been really struggling after the birth of my little boy. And I just knew that I didn't feel okay. And with lots of conversations with my doctor and lots of Googling, if I'm honest, lots of things were popping up. And my doctor was amazing. And I know not everybody's doctor is, but she mentioned ADHD. And my first reaction was, no, like, what's she banging on about? So I've been on such a massive learning curve. And so the way that I always describe it is this. Neurodiversity, if you take away the neuro, we're just saying diversity. Like, everybody is different. Diversity exists. So neurodiversity exists. And when we talk about a typical brain, we say neurotypical. And then when we talk about a brain that sort of diverges from that norm, that typical, we call that neurodivergent. So some people say it slightly differently. I think it's really important not to get hung up on it. Language is really important, but not so much that we're going to be pulling people down if they say the wrong thing, because usually if someone's talking about it, that is a good thing, and we want to have conversations in workplaces. But I would say neurodiversity is the umbrella. It means everybody's different. Neurodivergent means not neurotypical, and things that fall under neurodivergent conditions will be ADHD, autism, Asperger's, Tourette's, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and some people will have acquired neurodivergence from that might be short-term or long-term from an accident or something like that. So it's not a mental ill health condition, always sort of put that caveat in, but it can greatly impact people's mental health. So that's why it often falls under the heading of DE&I and also wellbeing, because there is often that crossover. And of course, lots of misdiagnosis of anxiety and depression that's been sort of missed ADHD and other neurodivergent conditions. Hope that was okay, Jamie.
That was beautiful. That was as good an explanation as I could have had it. Tom, I wanted you to jump in here because there's one thing that you said to me yesterday, which is no two people with ADHD are the same, right? I mean, I think we need to really focus on this individualism within these categories that we've been provided.
Yeah, so obviously, hi everyone. So obviously, probably adding just quickly, I'll say my story. The reason why I got the diagnosis because I was living a life of destructive behaviour, drinks, drugs, gambling, addictive personality. I never really understood who I was. Different works, leaving one work, leaving another work. Someone said something to me at work, would be leaving, hand them a notice in. And it got to a point in my life where my parents actually took me to the doctors at a younger age and said, I think there's sort of very excitable, lack of concentration, the class clown. And I didn't get that diagnosis at 13 because that's when my mum took me. She said I was just an excitable kid. And then obviously going through the destructive behaviour and chaotic life, it then obviously realised that obviously, yeah, the ADHD was there. I think when it comes to when you kind of start learning about ADHD and when you get the diagnosis, it is very much like a relief from everything, because it's like, well, why didn't I fit in, or why am I trying to get everyone to like me, or why do I need to say a certain thing, or why do I need to act a certain way? Because it all stems from childhood, being liked, wanting to fit in. But there is two types of ADHD. So we've got the inattentive side, and then we've got the hyperactive side. The inattentive side is mostly diagnosed with women, because it's very hard. It's a lot harder to actually get people or women to diagnose, because it's very much the daydreaming side. When people obviously talking to you and you're thinking, oh, blimey, actually, I need to get my nails done, or I need to be going out, or I need to be doing this, but you have people talking to you, effectively you're daydreaming out to something else. That obviously then comes with anxiety and depression. And then what normally happens is then, oh, you're depressed, so we're just going to throw antidepressants at you. And then obviously over a period of time, the sort of still the same behaviors come back. So there is, as I said, there's two types: hyperactive, which would be typical for men, and obviously the inattentive side, which would be more, which men can get, which is more like, as Jamie's mentioned, is the sort of internalized thoughts of, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I can't say this, I'm never going to be good enough for anything. So they are the two main types. They are the two types of ADHD.
That's brilliant. Oh,
you're on mute.
That's great. Thank you, mate. That was a great explanation. I think the way I wanted to structure this talk was to first talk about some of the things that neurodivergent people might struggle with in the workplace. I think it's a great place for us to start, right? Unfortunately, the workplace is generally built for a neurotypical brain. It's just the way it is. And so a lot of us find that we don't necessarily fit into the patterns that are more suitable to other people. So, Amy, could you start to break down a little bit some of the things that a neurodivergent person might be struggling with in the workplace, and we can kind of explore those a little bit?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, when you've met one person with ADHD, you've met one person with ADHD, and whatever else was under this umbrella. So it's still important to get to know your people, because it will be slightly different for everybody, but there are some common themes of which people that are neurodivergent in this room will know. So some of the big things for me, and actually something that I mentioned when I got a phone call from my new job this morning, was around, arriving to the new office. I don't feel nervous at all, but I'm very visual in the way that I receive information. So I've had to look on Google Maps to see where the building is so that I can see the road before I get there. And when they were arranging my diary for my first week, because I don't have access to my IT yet, they're giving me all of the information. They're telling me at what times these things are going to become available. So it's really about that information, because for me, I can forget things easily and I don't process the information really very well verbally. I like to see it in front of me. So what they're doing is they are creating a timetable for me for the first week that is very visual. Rather than just telling me over the phone, you need to be here, there, that's it. They're going to send that information to me in a way that I can digest, because I can really struggle with remembering things or processing that information where I need to be. Some other things that people often overlook, because people do think that it's about hyperactivity. They do think that it's about communication, but there's also these internal things that we can struggle with, like rejection sensitivity. So, for example, as a mindfulness teacher, though, I'm really, really good at spotting this now. But if a work colleague sends me a message that's a one-word answer, I might immediately think, oh my God, they hate me. Because we have this rejection sensitivity. We can't help it. Sometimes it's perceived. It's not even real. We can manage that, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of consideration how you're communicating. The other thing is emotional dysregulation. Something small might happen, but we might have a big reaction. Often it doesn't last long, so give people a little bit of space and time. And we have an interest-based nervous system and time blindness. So can you imagine, a lot of the time we can be late. A lot of the time we can really struggle to keep focused on a task. And so you really need to have these things in mind when you're thinking about your neurodivergent staff. Ask them how these things show up for them. What are their traits? What are their symptoms? Because like I say, everybody will be different, but there are going to be some of these common areas around memory, rejection, sensitivity, time blindness, our interest-based nervous system and focus, hyperactive energy, thinking about what times people are working, what fits best for them. There's loads more, but I might leave it there in case Tommy wants to come in.
Yeah, Tom, do you want to jump in here and add some of the barriers and some of the things that we can struggle with?
Yeah, like Amy's covered it really well, but there is a real difference. But when you've got neurodivergent team members, there is a real difference: empathy and sympathy, and that is one of the key things. Is someone going, "Oh, I'm finding it challenging at work. Oh, okay, what do you want me to do?" And all right, Tom, what can we do now that is going to help you get to that deadline? And that's where this is where it normally happens, is that when you're kind of like swimming in the ocean, you know where it is, but you don't know how to get there. And that's what it is providing sometimes clear instructions. And when it comes to context, it's making sure if you're giving instructions or you're giving something over saying, are you able to do this today? And then leave it like that. Or are you able to do this today? This is what you need to do to get there. So it's being able to obviously have the follow-up, But the main thing for me is it is really creating a safe environment where if you are a peer and I said to you, okay, I don't understand, it's me being able to feel safe to go to, I'm going to use Jamie example, go to Jamie and go, Jamie, are you able to explain that information a little bit more because I don't understand? Now, if you haven't created a safe environment like that, what will then tend to happen is that you've got colleagues that are there will go, do you know what, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing here, but I'm just going to agree with it and then just sit here for 45 minutes. Don't know what to do. I don't know who to ask. But then obviously what happens then is that I'm going to go, I'm not good enough for my job. This is going to make me look weak. This is going to affect a promotion. My boss is going to think that I can't do the job. I'm going to be in a meeting. I'm going to be sacked. You suddenly then railroading down to a dark hole just over maybe something that could be so simple because you haven't created being approachable. That is the main thing, is being approachable. And I think when you start learning about yourself and having them, because we've all been meetings or used Slack or
it's
used
going to be a lot worse conditions.
Slack or Teams.
Yeah, it's one of the cheaper ones.
Sorry, Martin.
Oh, it's the cheapest one I found as well.
Sorry there, Martin. Would we be able to ask you to put your microphone on mute, please?
I wonder what's cheaper now. I'm
Perfect.
interested.
Thanks, Martin.
Maybe he's got a bargain. Maybe he's got a bargain. I like bargains. So lost trail of thought here, but however, so yeah, it's obviously creating that safe environment for people to be able to be approachable. And I think sometimes when we are in a rush or with other colleagues, we can shorthand stuff. So we can go, oh yeah, just do that normal thing. And you're like, okay, what's the normal thing then? And then so it is that, yeah, again, giving clear context. I think one of the main things as well is group settings. One thing that I do find challenging is if you're offering training sessions and you know that you've got neurodivergent maybe colleagues, then is obviously having like an agenda after or being able to say to them, did you get everything for that group setting, or do you actually need a one-to-one basis? I learn better on a one-to-one basis than a group setting. That's me personally. But yeah, that would be one of the things as well.
I mean, what's underpinning all of this is...
Jamie, sorry, can I just add something? Is that all right?
Yeah, please.
I don't know if you're going to ask this question, but I'm just going to quickly say that there's also a flip side to these things, which I think is a really important thing to say. You're probably going to ask the question, but I'm just going to chuck it in now because it sounds quite negative and there are struggles and there are these symptoms and traits. However, we're really fucking good at what we do as well. Like, we're really good employees and like we can get shit done. And I just feel like sometimes people do focus on this and not, we can't ignore that. We want to help our people, but we're great in a crisis. If we are interested in something, if we've got a deadline, we absolutely can get that work done. We are passionate. We are compassionate. We are really good colleagues to have, and we can get a lot of work done. Like, I've had numerous roles in the finance world for 19 years before I did all of this stuff. And, you know, to think about that as an accountant just seems wild, but there's lots of deadlines, so I like that. But I just want to say as well, we're so capable. We are so capable. If we're just given the environments to be able to be who we are, we can totally achieve great things. So I just needed to get that in there because we're all so awesome.
No, I'm glad you did, because you're right. We're going to focus a lot on the barriers and the obstacles, and I think it's a really, really important point that these types of strategies that we're talking about, it's a massive opportunity, massive. Like, we're not only just avoiding someone who is neurodiverse from feeling a lot of this negative stuff, it's a hell of an opportunity to get the most out of them as well. Like I always describe, my brain is like a supercomputer, but it's Windows 93. So it's really messy. Gemma knows this because she works with me. It's really messy. It's kind of all over the place. You click one thing, something else pops up, but it is powerful, like really powerful. You can just focus on one program at a time. It's amazing. We've all got a mutual friend, Arba, right? Arba's got autism. Arba Ismaili. He's amazing. Absolutely amazing. And if you've got LinkedIn, I'll send you his profile, because he's really open about talking about autism. We did a podcast episode and I asked him if he minded, and he said that he didn't mind me talking about it. But some of the things that he highlighted were sensory sensitivities. And I kind of wanted to throw this at you, Thomas, as something that we might be kind of overlooking Often we talk a lot about ADHD, especially as people with ADHD. We love it because we're discovering about ourselves and it's interesting and exciting. But there is, there is a little bit more to neurodiversity than just ADHD. So Thomas, kind of flipping that over to you.
Yeah, sensory overload, massive one. Like I can't forgive my future wife if I have a child that has screaming babies, because I will probably panic. But yeah, it definitely, especially in the workplace, I think sometimes the things that we can offer is obviously like noise cancelling, like earphones, because we can be really sensitive. But what happens when you've got maybe environments like table tennis tables or pool tables or anything like that, music in the background like a radio, suddenly my focus on work is gone, right, oh bloody hell, it's
basketball next to your desk.
The Spice Girls are on. Oh, I love that tune. Oh, I better get up. And then suddenly from the Spice Girls, I go, oh, what year was that Spice Girls song? And then I'm going on Google to search when the Spice Girls song, and then I wonder, and then wonder what they're doing now. And then suddenly you're going back into it. So it suddenly then goes into a spiral. But yeah, one of the massive things that people don't do is sensory, is having like noise cancelling earphones. And this can be really good as neurodivergent employees, is that as much as it can be doing the extra additional work that we are doing it as a business, but also it's the neurodivergent colleagues also asking for what we need or what we actually need. Because I think sometimes I know, yeah, obviously with different companies, it's like, well, we need to do this, but also it's kind of taking some responsibility as like an ADHD like me, where I need to know what my boundaries are. I need to know what I need in an environment to actually thrive. And obviously, yeah, noise cancelling earphones. If my manager came up to me and he sees that I've got noise cancelling earphones, that's my signal to say, don't distract me. I'm in a hyper focus with work at the moment, because if you distract me and ask me something about, I don't know, who won Love Island last night, that's going to send me off, and I'm going to then be like, I've lost flow. So then I'd obviously then get confused. So it's just obviously having the little signs and signals that neurodivergent staff can do. And I said, yeah, one's is kind of that signal, and it's kind of just learning about it, because this is all quite new. So you might get it wrong. You might tap someone on the shoulder and go, oh shit, forgot you've got headphones on. But it's all about being curious and learning.
And can I just mention about when I feel overstimulated, or that sensitivity can really overlap a lot of neurodivergent conditions. So for me, it's the way that I describe it is this: if I'm in a place with a loud noise that's supposed to be a loud noise, like a concert, I'm cool, because that's supposed to be happening. So my brain can deal with that. It's quite black and white in a way. If I'm in a space like an office and there is a noise that sort of shouldn't be there, like a tapping, a ticking, a clicking, or whatever it is, something that could be overwhelming, or the acoustics of a room, and neurodivergent people will probably understand, but it's almost like the room feels uncomfortable because the acoustics are weird, and it can set you almost like teeth on edge. And sometimes I'm not an angry person. Really, people can know that about me. Like, I'm literally the happy-go-lucky. But sometimes, like, I can feel it inside me. It's almost like irritation, this overstimulation, and I can get agitated. So because there's a shared responsibility in these situations, I can completely own when I've done that and say, I'm really sorry I was an arsehole because I was totally irritated and overstimulated, and I felt really uncomfortable. But again, it comes back to that understanding, having some of those things in place. And like Tommy just said about the headphones, like, I literally have all of these here to show you, like, all of my different fidget aids for different situations. Like, just make this normal in your workplace, because like, people think it's the kids, but when I'm in an aeroplane and I'm starting to feel anxious and there's lots of different noises, it's just something like this can be so soothing for that sort of energy and that overstimulation, that sensitivity. And things like this can be a really good thing to use as a signal as well. You might only wear this on a day where you feel like you are hypersensitive or you're not feeling too good. You decide that in your workplace, how you use some of these tools. But absolutely everybody should have their things that they want and need in their bag, and have with them everywhere. And we should normalise that. So yeah, these are lifesavers in situations like that. But just to say that we as neurodivergent people also have a responsibility to own how sometimes that might manifest. There's got to be this working together. It's not just one person's responsibility, it's a shared responsibility.
Katie's put a great comment in the chat, which is that this is also the case in Teams. You can convey a message using emojis, which I love as an idea, because I've been in Teams meetings before where I can't talk. I don't want to talk. And other times where all I want to do is talk. And if I had a subtle way to be able to convey how I was feeling, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And there has been a couple of other questions. Are we coming to them at the end, Jamie? The questions in there?
Yeah, we'll come back to the questions at the end for sure. But
okay,
thank you guys for popping those in. I think underpinning all of this so far is one clear theme, which is communication. And it's from both sides. It's from the person who is neurodivergent and also from the organization. Do you think, Amy, here's a question for you. Do you think it's inappropriate for a manager to ask someone if they're neurodivergent? Maybe at the offset when they first meet or when they're entering the workplace. Is there a tactful way to do that?
I mean, initial thing, yeah, it's inappropriate. However, it depends where that is coming from. Like, we shouldn't be asking people. We should be hoping that people are going to disclose. But it depends on the relationship that you've got. It depends why you're asking. Like, you need to ask yourself why you're approaching these conversations, why you're asking the questions you ask, if you are the manager. Because if you're going at it from a place of compassion and empathy, and because you want to do right by the person, then these conversations are really important to have. It's not just about asking the question, it's about how you're asking it. You don't have to go in all guns blazing and ask someone to disclose something that they might not want to disclose. If you really want to know and you really want to be supportive, then a better tack might be to say, we have certain things in place for neurodivergent employees, and just talk about it. You don't have to go in and put somebody on the spot and ask the question. But if you have certain things in place, especially if they are a new employee, which is what you just said, in terms of your induction into the business, in terms of having these conversations, giving people the opportunity to open up about these things, then you're going to sort of start off on the right foot. If it's further down the line and you've already got a relationship, then you should know whether it's appropriate to talk to a colleague about this sort of thing, because you already know the sort of relationship that you have. If you have concerns about an employee that you would love to know if they're neurodivergent, or you've been watching Tommy on LinkedIn and you think, oh, that really reminds me of somebody in my office, but you are a little bit scared to ask them, you could literally say, I've seen this guy on LinkedIn and he's doing this thing. Maybe we could have a look together. Or you could say, Jamie's got this session going on. Should we join it? Are you interested in this? Like, there's different ways to approach conversations with people than just asking them and putting them on the spot.
That's great. I want to kind of just to kind of explore this opportunity to think about practical things that people can do. I love some of the tech and some of the gadget and some of the fidget things that you guys have talked about. But is there anything in terms of the way people work? I'm thinking kind of more towards sort of hybrid working, flexible working. What are those sort of things that people can do, Tom?
Loads of stuff that you can do, as in what you can do as a neurodivergent to
as an employer,
be better at work. As an employer. So I think one of the main things for me to encourage is, I'm going to go to meetings now, but when it comes to meetings, a lot of people will say catch-up meetings, or let's have a catch-up meeting. And I think sometimes when it comes to stuff like that, is that why not give context? And I think another thing I want to sort of just quickly point on here is that when it comes to being neurodivergent, neurotypical, it never is neurodivergent against neurotypical, right? These two people, right, they get a fag break, they don't. It then goes into that world of, well, someone gets a break, they don't, and then everyone sort of goes, well, they get sort of, so we say, special treatment. All the things that happen, that suggestions, is actually for everyone. I'm sure even if you're neurotypical or neurodivergent and someone sends you a catch-up meeting, for example, at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, the last meeting of the day, everyone, even if you're, as a human, we're just going to be, oh my God, what is that? I'm feeling really anxious about that. And then suddenly you're messaging your manager going, oh, any chance we can have a chat? So I think sometimes it's kind of over communicating with things like that, as in saying what the catch-up meeting is. If the catch-up meeting is about a marketing meeting, so why don't you just put marketing meeting, for example. The meeting's about a marketing, because obviously I know everyone does it like catch-up meeting, but for me, I would think, oh my God, I'm going to be anxious all day. I'm not going to be productive because I'm going to be thinking about that meeting all day. And when it gets to it, and I'll be like, oh, actually, it's just a really good feedback we had about the recent work you've done. And I think, fucking hell, thank the Lord, because I was about to update my CV. And I think it's just sometimes common things, and I think it's giving and stuff like tasks, or if you're giving like projects, it's making sure people do understand, or give an extra 15 minutes after the task to actually process that information, or give them 15 minutes after to give a bit of people a bit of time, just because sometimes I don't like surprises. I absolutely despise surprises. And then suddenly, if someone goes to me, oh, here you go, there's loads of work, and I think, I don't know where to start. I'll get overwhelmed by it all. And I'm thinking it's planning. If I know that there's a surprise coming and I know what that surprise is, i.e. work, I then can basically work my brain out and say, right, this is the work that's coming, this is what I need to do. And then I can strategically plan, because I hate the unknown, but then my brain can plan towards that, so then I can be more productive. So when you have got colleagues, things like obviously catch-up meetings, giving context, but also not surprising colleagues with loads of work. But I know that could potentially happen. But sometimes if you do get the work, instead of just sending it on, is maybe give 15 minutes to speak to that person. Just say, I've got quite a bit of work on here. These are things that we're going to be working on. Just want to make sure that you're comfortable or happy with that. And I think sometimes it's giving some people a bit of planning for certain things. Hope that helps.
And can I just add in, like, I've just seen some of the comments, some are questions. I know we're going to get to them, but I think it's just important to mention it right now. When we're talking about people maybe not receiving things very well, or people worrying about how conversations are going to go or how they're being perceived, this is your culture, and this might not be an overnight thing. I've just scribbled this down because I wanted to really address what's been cropping up. This isn't an overnight thing. You have to build trust to be able to have these open and honest conversations. So just going in and saying we're going to have a form to have a conversation, or you're going to disclose your neurodivergence and everything's going to be okay, that is not what it's all down to. This is probably a bit of a slow burner as you build trust. If that's what your organisation is like, you might already have a small organisation with really close teams, a culture of trust and openness. These things will be easier because you already have that. If you don't, you're going to have to take some time to build these things. And I always say, if you're going to think about how you're going to create that culture, make adjustments normal, not formal, so people don't feel like they're being singled out and it's this special thing that you're doing. Make them normal. You should be asking everybody their preferences in terms of the way they work, their hours, flexibility, communication style, and the way they want to receive things, regardless of whether they're neurodivergent or not. The more that we normalise this stuff, the less that it becomes this special thing that we need to do, and it stops people from feeling like they might be being singled out or worrying about anything.
This is an incredible point. So ultimately what we're saying is put people in a position where they can tell you how they like to work. And I guess there's two things
Shocking,
there.
I know, we're all adults.
Yeah, but I guess there's two things. One, I think many of us don't actually know how we like to work. So
yeah, that's
giving them the opportunity to learn how they like to work.
Yeah.
Because as you said, if this was normal, if every person came into an organization or presented themselves in an organization and the first thing they did was explain how they like to work, that was normal, then we wouldn't really need to be having this event.
Darn it. But no, there's still that isn't the way. Look, all of us, I'm 40 now, so I've been in the workforce for a long time. And my goodness, when I started at 18, these conversations were not being had. I was told off for the nail varnish that I was wearing. Like, honestly, it's so different now, but we're not in those times anymore. We can have open and honest conversations. It's just about how we do it. And you're right, not everybody knows how they work best. So let's do this together. Let's figure it out. Because at the end of the day, we all want to do a good job. I don't think there's many people that want to take the piss. And by the way, some people will, because we're humans. Someone could say they've got a bad back and take the piss. Do you know what I mean? It's not about that. It's about making everybody feel comfortable enough to do a good job. And most people want to do that.
What do you just to add on that? So just to add on that, I think from where we are now is that the stuff that we do at Sony is that if we get reasonable adjustments, which we put on prior to the application, and people are putting the reasonable adjustments, and that candidate then on boards, we've already collected that information, that reasonable adjustments point. So then you don't really, the information prior of what the reasonable adjustments they have, because obviously we ask at that point of maybe we don't have to if I go back to wording, we ask for reasonable adjustments if they need reasonable adjustments. There is a box there to say what condition do you have in terms of the interview process and how we can communicate that. So if you do on board, I know you might have past colleagues or colleagues already in that are not at that stage, but when especially comes now, when you are starting maybe hiring, ramps up, especially coming to April, that point there is obviously having that collection of where we do offer the reasonable adjustments. When that candidate on boards, you already have that information, so you don't have to have the awkward conversation of going, oh, have you got anything? Obviously, like Amy said, but you've already collected that information, so we already know. So it's then being mindful of, we know this candidate or this employee needed reasonable adjustments for this particular condition. How can we then facilitate that now in a workplace without having that awkward?
What could be said, Tom, by the employing organisation before the person's even been employed to make the candidate feel comfortable to explain that they are neurodivergent? What could they say to make them feel comfortable, and so that process kind of gets a bit of a kickstart?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I think it really, when you've got neurodivergent team members, for example, that are maybe championing or champions, it's one of a loose term, but yeah, or people that are embracing being neurodivergent, are really confident about it, speaking to other people. These are the kind of things that you want in your business. You want someone, if they feel comfortable, or an experienced ADHD or someone that's experienced someone in autism, to actually really champion that, because the best teachers are the people that have gone for the lived experiences. Not everyone fits all, but what it is, I've forgotten what it's called, but it's reverse. I've forgotten what it's called. Reverse. That's it. Reverse mentoring, where a leader at maybe a C-level up there, a C-level maybe for an employee, is learning from someone that maybe, and I know it's hierarchy is a title at the end of the day, but it's actually learning from people that have got other lived experiences. And I think sometimes when we champion that, either through our wording, especially when it comes to inclusive language, when we are putting our job advert out in general and saying fast, dynamic, ninja, 100 years experience, guitar player and all that, you're thinking, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, that's definitely not me. I'm definitely not fast paced. I'm definitely not sociable, blah, blah, blah. But what that really means is actually with technology is fast paced. So it's innovating technology. So sometimes it's looking at the wording, because what can happen is that these massive corporate big buzzwords, sometimes I think, what? So basically you want all this person, but really what you wanted to do is just basically someone to be creative of projects. But we've got 6, 8, 9 terms of all these big words, and I'm thinking, I don't even know what that word is, and I'm not going to apply. So it's sometimes from that is how people can feel, is how the language and how you perceive yourself online, or how we obviously do the advert in general, if we're being inclusive. And then obviously, yeah, that we can normally kind of tell with that inclusive language, with the stuff that we do. If we've got people that are in the business that are championing that, speak to them first if you want. Have them conversations. I think it's having people or representation of people with different neurodivergent mindsets, where people do feel comfortable and go, because most people who've got ADHD want to speak to someone who's got ADHD and they're best friends within a week. So it's having that familiarity where people really do understand. So that would be my point on that.
Right, Amy, did you want to add to that? I saw you nodding.
No, I'm just agreeing.
Oh, just agreeing. Just two ADHD people agreeing with something.
Yes,
that's good.
Tommy.
We've covered so much of what I set out to talk about. We've just done it in the most random order ever, which is the most representative ADHD thing I've ever seen. We've touched on pretty much everything that I had in there, but we've done it completely out of order. Maybe.
Sorry, I'm doing it again. It's because I'm excited. I know you're going to go to the questions, but just in case anybody does have to drop off and we start to run over, can we just answer the one that was the most recent? So it's at the bottom of the list, just in case you were going to go from the top, around whether people have to be diagnosed to receive support from their employer. They're going to have to prove that they're diagnosed. And the answer is no. So the Equality Act 2010 is what you want to be thinking about. You don't even need to worry about that. All you need to know is that people can be self-diagnosed. You don't have to have a bit of paper. Now, under that act, things that are classed as a disability are those things that are physical or mental impairments. Now, some things are automatically covered. Something like cancer can be automatically covered, but ADHD isn't. So it would mean that there would have to be a disclosing of it to fall under that Disability Equality Act, but it doesn't have to be a formal diagnosis. You don't need to be going with a bit of paper. Your employer should be offering you support, whether you've got a bit of paper or not. Particularly, if you've disclosed it and you're asking for help, yes, they absolutely need to support you. Sorry, Jamie, I just wanted to cover that off before we.
No, I missed that.
Yeah,
missed that question. So that's great. Thank you so much. So yeah, I wanted to kind of turn the floor now to you all and see if there's anybody that wanted to ask a question. If you do, feel free to pop your hand up, and I'll drop you into the conversation. You can maybe talk about an experience you've had, or maybe you want to share a neurodivergent experience that you've experienced because you are neurodivergent, or maybe you want to ask a question. Is there anybody that wants to pop their hand up? Feel free to stick something in the comments. We did have one.
Or unmute.
Or unmute.
We've got. I think we've got a few questions, Jamie.
I have.
Oh, Katie.
Yeah, go, Katie. Has it cut off?
Katie, please go ahead.
That's a question. So I couldn't find out a way of putting my. Oh, so I've got broadband issues. I was wondering, because in work they talk about reasonable adjustments, and I'm also aware there's like it's the right to work, like a government thing where you can get
Katie, I think that your Wi-Fi isn't working, but this is a question that often crops up. So I think I know you're talking about access to work and reasonable adjustments. Is that right? Feel free to go in the chat if it's is that right?
Yeah, and I suppose like examples of what each of those things covers, because it's quite that there's not a catalogue of reasonable adjustments, so it's quite difficult to know what are the options that are available, what's classed as a reasonable adjustment, what additional help you could get. Particularly aware that some sites might also have like physiological aspects to it as well, things like sort of glasses, hearing assistance.
Yes. So, sorry, Jamie, I'm just jumping in. I didn't even.
Crack on, Amy.
So, number one, the word reasonable adjustments, it sort of boils my piss a little bit, because reasonable is so subjective. I know, sorry, I'm just saying it how it is. What reasonable to one person, might not be reasonable to another. It's a wildly inappropriate phrase anyway. So, and you're right, there isn't an exhaustive list. So it is going to have to be on a sort of a company by company basis. You're going to have a look at what is within your realms of possibility, basically, and you make those decisions. If people are coming to you with a genuine need for something physical, you wouldn't turn them away if they needed that to do their job. So we've really got to think about it in that context. And access to work is a good thing to look into, because as you start to search for that on good old Google or whatever, you'll start to see where people are talking about the types of adjustments that they've had. Access to work is really good as well, because they do give you a list of suggestions, and they do tell you what they cover. So in terms of physical things like chairs and standing desks, but also other things in terms of software and other bits and pieces. So there isn't an exhaustive list. It is a really annoying sort of situation to be in and a phrase to use. But you just have to we have to use our noggin in the situations and talk to our people and decide what we think is appropriate in your workplace, because everybody's is different. Is that all right, Jamie?
That's a fantastic answer. Kelly, have you got a question for us?
Yeah, I have, if that's okay. Thanks,
Kelly.
guys. Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Amazing. My question is around to Thomas and Amy, probably more directly, is that you seem to have an amazing awareness of yourselves and identify certain behaviours in yourself. What if there's an employee that demonstrates certain behaviours that they're they don't associate that with themselves or with ADHD or, you know, whatever the diagnosis might be. And actually that's presenting itself in quite an extreme way. Like, how would you approach that conversation with somebody? Like, have you worked in an employed role where a manager might have brought that to you, or?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think are you able to maybe give examples of what kind of behaviour you are seeing in this particular employee?
Yeah, so there's a particular employee. She obviously, we went through the interview process. She never asked for any adjustments or you know, made us aware of any formal diagnosis, which is fine. She'd worked with us for a week and then obviously confided in me that, you know, this were her kind of behavior patterns and what she struggled with. So we had lots of like exploratory meetings of like, how do I get the best out of you? You know, what sort of environments do you perform well in? Like, had all those kind of exploratory meetings. And then this kind of almost went to the extreme in terms of like boundaries with relationships, in terms of like with a particular colleague. There was quite a lot of intensity around that. Also, she was like a serial dater. She was quite happy to share her experiences quite openly with partners who were absolutely terrified to hear about her escapades. So yeah, there was almost like a professional boundary issue that, you know, it was really, it's really difficult.
It is, because with obviously ADHD, we'll be honest, we are massive oversharers. And I think sometimes it's really until you understand yourself. It's a hard one, because you probably want to say, I think you've got ADHD, but you don't want to go, you don't want to say, because obviously you want to go, well, you're accusing me of ADHD. How dare you? And then suddenly it comes. It's a real tough one. I think sometimes
the difficulty there is without that diagnosis, you would be managing that behaviour in the workplace differently. But if it's classed as a disability or whatever you would want to, like, would you manage that differently? Would you manage that behaviour differently?
I just think, for me, you'd manage it how if someone would actually have ADHD and try and do as much as you can. But I think you do get to a point where, obviously, as a business, you've got to think, we need to kind of maybe go down that route, or we need to have a conversation of what do you feel like it's not working? Is this something that you don't understand? And then suddenly people will kind of try and pour it out. Sometimes it's obviously it's a really tough one, because obviously you've probably got people going, oh, why is she oversharing all this? And you're thinking, is she okay? But it's just because obviously we're typical excited about dating escapades and stuff like that. And I've done it before, prior to the diagnosis. I just tell everyone my dark secrets, and I was just trying to like trauma bond with everyone. And I just think, who is this guy? Like, telling us this dark secrets from when you're 18, getting smashed. And I thought, this is my new manager. But because he talks about drink, I've gone to the next level. But I think sometimes it really does take to really understand yourself. And I think sometimes you have got to have a conversation, because obviously I can probably understand if you told and said, look, we don't want to hear about your dating stories. She'll go, oh shit, I feel really bad like now. And she probably got anxiety over sharing that sort of thing. And she probably does feel bad 2-3 days or later on, going, why did I just share that with my colleague? But I think if you already know by the kind of signs, it's kind of doing the things that you can possibly do now to a point, because at the end of the day, it has to be from someone to go to, I've got ADHD, to really open up. But I think you should treat it really as if she has got it, without saying she has got it, if that makes sense.
Can I jump in as well and just say, this is why everybody needs to have mindfulness in their life, because it's really good for self-awareness. Just saying, not got anything to sell. So Kelly, it might be good for you, I don't know the size of your organisation, but to have some sort of session for your staff, so that these conversations could be brought about. I've done that before for a couple of large organisations that felt like they had a lot of neurodivergent employees that weren't disclosing, and so we did an awareness session, and it sort of encouraged people to do that. And the other thing that I would say is that there's a lot of it's almost like, oh, we're neurodivergent, therefore we should be given free rein to do whatever we like. Absolutely not. At the end of the day, we are still employees, and there are still a lot of other members of staff that we need to really care about. And the impact of that one person on those other people, the impact on whether the job is getting done. Like, we still have a job to do. And that's where it comes back to this shared responsibility. You know, just because someone's neurodivergent, whether, whatever heading it's falling under, that we're still employees. And there are still things in place to make sure that everybody not just that person, is safe and well, to ensure that the organisation and the business can thrive and continue and the work gets done. And so if somebody needs to be taken down the route of having a conversation, you're allowed to do that. And like Tommy said, it might even encourage those conversations to happen, because they might not realise the impact of their behaviour, particularly if they haven't had any help up until this point. So I know it's a balance. I know it's not always easy, but if we can try maybe do something around raising that awareness, not specifically for that one person, but then also manage them as you would manage somebody. If you're giving them help, but they still need to be managed, that's okay. That's okay as well.
Or also,
really
and add to that, or get someone to talk about ADHD from lived experiences, and they're reeling out all their traits, and then suddenly you're thinking, she's thinking, oh my god, because sometimes it does sometimes it does help someone from maybe like lived experiences to go, do you know what, this is what I'm like, this is my behaviour, serial dating, can't keep a relationship. I've been there, I know it. So then suddenly you get to a point where you might maybe invite someone in to do like a talk around neurodiversity or whatever, and then suddenly you get her on the call and you talk to someone from lived experiences and suddenly go, do you know what, Kelly, I think I've got ADHD, and then you can manage that conversation just a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just an idea.
No, thanks guys, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kelly. That's great. I mean, I can mirror that. That's exactly what happened to me. And when you realise that you are neurodivergent, when that penny drops, it's a pretty exciting feeling, because there's so much unexplained. You feel so detached almost in a way. And so it's a great point that Tom's making. Getting people to talk about traits in the workplace, I think is a brilliant idea, because him talking about it is the reason that I got diagnosed. Him specifically talking about it. Go on, Tom.
Send them my way. We can trauma bond together, and I'll get it out. I'll get it out of them in 5 minutes. Don't worry.
We've got another question here from Haroop. Would you like to jump in now? Thank you so much for asking a question.
Perfect. And thank you so much. This has been so insightful as well for holding this event. So in terms of support for neurodivergent people, I see as an employer responsibility to support people in 3 different groups. So people that have neurodivergent children, so parents of neurodivergent children, training for everybody, and also support for neurodivergent people themselves. Do you feel like there's an overlap, or should we keep them separate? What are your thoughts on that?
Amy or Tom? Tom, you want to jump in?
I think sometimes I don't have children, so I probably don't have any lived experiences. Or I think sometimes it depends if you're having all that as one category, really, as a business. Yeah, are you saying that you've got 3 categories under one category for the support in that business?
Yeah, I think people can fall into 3 different groups. So should you have a support group like for people that are neurodivergent, but also a support group for parents that have neurodivergent children because they have separate challenges? Or should you put it all under the umbrella of one sort of theme and break it out for everybody? I think that's a really
Sorry,
good one.
Tommy, I'm just jumping in because that's what we're going to do at ADHD 360. So in terms of our patient support, you could have a general group, because it's nice for everybody to sort of be together and know each other and offer support no matter what. But you know, I mean, as a parent with ADHD, to parent and look after a child who I'm not sure is neurodivergent or not, that offers a challenge. And then I have friends with neurodivergent children. They're not neurodivergent, but their children are, and that is a whole nother world of potential pain and struggle. And they're very specific to that group of people. So if you're going to be putting together support, it is going to be different for those different groups of people. So I would say to have something generalised, but I definitely agree that there should be specific support for specific people in those categories, and that's what we're going to be doing for our patients as well, so offering specific support to them.
Okay, I guess it's finding out what the need is and how you can support each individual, right? And having the right
absolutely, and let people lead the way, because if they're in a group, they've obviously disclosed, they have decided that they're going to be in the group of parents, for example, so they've already given an element of information. So allow people to lead the way a little bit, because you'll find that as soon as people start to speak, there'll be massive commonalities between them, and you'll almost get the answers from them themselves. Most people might just need a nap. If I'm that's amazing to hear that you're doing that. By the way,
you. No worries, thank you.
Yeah, amazing that you're thinking outside of the support for the neurodivergent employee as well, because as someone who is neurodivergent, I often get, and I think the guys will agree with this, parents coming to us and saying, I think my child has ADHD or I think my child has this, and they want to open a dialogue. And I get asked everything in regards to medication, management, coaching, all of these things. So I think that you brought a really important point to the table. So thank you so much. We've got a couple of minutes left. Sorry, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I work with teachers and some of them have neurodivergent children, and getting to work in the morning can be a massive struggle, and I feel their pain, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
can believe it. Thank you so much. Is there anybody that wanted to ask a question? I've been trying to keep track of the chat, but as is typical, I keep getting distracted by people talking. So is there anyone who wants to jump in?
There's a couple, Jamie, that I've just noticed the questions. So really quickly, I've seen someone mention, I think it might be the same person a couple of times, talking about financial well-being and getting people to together. And the thing is, with those people who are neurodivergent, those things just almost don't bother us until the shit hits the fan, basically, especially in terms of money and stuff. So I think that if someone said to me, this is not it's not a definitive answer, but if someone said to me, look, we've got this stuff that can really help you to not get all of the late fines, not be in trouble with late payments, and manage your finance. If someone just said to me, we can help you, then it might get me to pay attention. But I'm afraid that we are the toughest audience when it comes to things like this. So I don't have a magic pill for that. But all I would say is just be very black and white. Are you there? I can't. I thought someone. Oh no, Alina's AD. I thought it was Alina. You can mute that, I think. Can you, Jamie?
Oh, there we go. What? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you're in charge, mate.
I had no idea. I am a terrible host.
And then the other thing.
Thank you, Amy.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for the answer. That explains. Hi. That explains a lot, especially in the context of planning. I find that my clients with ADHD have a very spontaneous approach with money. So from a coaching point of view, I'd love to know what we can do to support them, and all those HR-driven discussions around pay rises or pay management or things like that. That I find that it's such a difficult thing to process and manage.
Yeah, it'll be one of the most difficult. And those conversations can be really difficult. So I just say keep things very black and white. Stick with the positive outcomes if you're really trying to get people on board with stuff like that. But I think that's one of the hardest conversations to have, because it's like we want to run away from it. And I was an accountant for 19 years.
Thank you.
I still find it difficult, if I'm being honest. But money, God, that's the worst.
Shame. Is there anyone that wants to ask a quick question just before we wrap up? Anybody? I mean, I think we've covered a hell of a lot. I just want a massive thank you to you, Amy. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights. Massive thank you to you as well, Tom. And thank you so much for pulling me out of the ADHD closet that I didn't even know I was in. And a huge thank you to all of you for showing that there is a need and a hunger to support us folks. And I hope that this has been valuable. I will be sending a recording out, so if you wanted to pass it on or rewatch it, feel free. And if you have any more additional questions, please ping them over to any of us. What I'll do is in that email that I send out to you is I'll put our LinkedIn profile. So please add us, please connect with us, and then we can kind of continue this conversation. So thank you, everybody.